Well, it's been a while since we've done anything to the car. Pretty much just been driving it, and everything is going pretty well. But we have been having like some fuel pressure issues where you drive the car for a while, it gets hot, and then it doesn't make any fuel pressure anymore. I have tested the regulator, the regulator's working, so right now we're kind of just redoing the whole fuel system. So I'll show you what I got going on here. Our original issue seemed like we were getting too much pressure in the fuel tank, so I would open up the gas cap and it would just pressurize, like it'd be so pressurized. And then it actually, the reason I noticed that was because my fuel pump was getting super loud, and it's always been a very quiet pump. And it was actually because the gas tank was over pressurizing. So I checked the vent line, which is all the way down here, right here. And it actually had this check valve on it, which was, this goes right to your charcoal canister, but I did the charcoal canister like purge valve, all the emissions delete. So I replaced that guy with just a standard check valve, and that seemed to alleviate the issue for a little while anyways, but it seems like we're still having some fuel pressure issues, like it's not bumping up enough, and we don't pressurize our fuel tank anymore. I actually just checked it just now, that's why the cap's open. But it's been really, really hot here, so I don't know, we've had like a heat wave. It's kind of around like 36 degrees Celsius, which is it's actually like gross hot for where I live in Canada. So yeah, we're now just gonna go ahead and replace almost everything except for our fuel pump and our injectors. So I've got a bunch of parts here. So we have a -6 AN PTFE kit, and then we also have, this is our -8 kit. We still have a lot. This is from when I did the line from the filter to the rail. So we still have this -8 PTFE and a bunch of fittings. And then I also have, let's see, I gotta open this up here, but we have some bungs. These are like weld-on bungs for the fuel pump hanger, since we have that kinked feed line. So this is gonna be the -6 for the return line. And this is gonna be the -8. Nope, sorry, that's another -6. Came in packs of 2, but yeah, there's the -8 bung. So we're gonna weld those on, run -8 feed all the way to this guy, which is a new fuel pump, or sorry, a fuel filter. So just a generic Amazon fuel filter. I do have another filter that I'm gonna be using, but this one has a 10 micron filter, which is gonna be what I want. The other one was like 100, which don't wanna use 100. That's like a pre-filter for a pump. And then I have this electrical bulkhead fitting, which I'm gonna use to make a straight 10 gauge connection to the pump. So we're gonna skip the connector altogether. Then yeah, just a bunch of other miscellaneous. I had to get these tight radius fittings. So when I get the bungs off so like the fittings right off of the hanger, you need a tight radius fitting, or else you're not going to be able to put the cover back on. So got a bunch of parts here. And then I have a AM fuel rod. This is a really, really old one. So we're going to have to weld on. I'm going to get some aluminum fittings and weld on some -8 on both ends, so we can get that on there. And then we have -8 feed all the way to here. And then I actually have a new fuel pressure regulator on the way too, which accommodates for a -8 fitting as well, for inlet and outlet. Like for your both sides are going to be -8. So we're going to have -8 coming in all the way to our regulator, and then also out our regulator we're going to have -8 as well, up until our ethanol sensor, which we're going to have switch that to -6. And the reason I went with a new regulator was because these 525 hellcat pumps are very notorious for like running, like your fuel system, and the orifices on a lot of these fuel pressure regulators are just too small and kind of a choke point. So figured I'd just send it and get a new fuel pressure regulator while I'm at it, and hopefully that eliminates everything, because at that point we're gonna have a whole new fuel system, and the only thing that would be untouched is the fuel tank itself. So we'll get started on that. So we got the pump out yet again. So what we got to do is chop this guy off and chop this guy off. So these two right here. And then we can, we also got to take this connector out. So we'll take this guy out as well and drill some holes, and then I'll go give it to a welder, because I only have one shot at this, so I'm not doing it myself. I'll get somebody who knows what they're doing to do it, and we'll yeah, see what that looks like. Should look pretty sweet once we're done. Holy, that was an absolute battle to take this connector out. That was super annoying. So basically there is two like little punches on each side, and you kind of have to try and fold them over to take this connector out. And what I did was I just drilled a tiny little hole on it, then got a little tiny screwdriver. You can see it's all bent and out of whack now, and just try and fold them over. Obviously I didn't get them completely folded out, so that's probably why I fought taking this thing out so much. But holy man, that was a nightmare. I probably spent like 2 hours on that thing. So I finally got that out, and now all I have to do is cut these off. I'm gonna keep this, and the reason I want to keep this is because it actually seals super nice, and I don't want to deal with having to get some hose clamps and have that seal up. So I think I'm just gonna drill, cut that, just drill it out to the same size as this. And I'm kind of gonna I think I'm gonna do the same for the return. I wanna try and keep all the factory. I do have an Evo siphon, so if I do botch the return, we're gonna be okay. But yeah, I think I'm gonna try and keep the same orifice, diameter, on the bottom side here. So I'll let you know how that goes, but geez, that was a fight to get this thing out. If you don't have to, don't do it. So essentially don't weld your fittings on, just get those bulkhead fittings that just clamp from the other side. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. Bam. So there's kind of the finished product, not the finished product, but like what I'm pretty much done with. Obviously everything's taken off of it, and we cut off the feed and the return, and then I took a buffer wheel and buffed everything off, and hopefully that's clean enough for him to weld. But yeah, we're gonna get -8 welded there, -6 welded there, and I just want to show you how bad the kink was on their feed line. And I mean, like, it didn't look this bad in car, but holy, like, that's definitely going to restrict some flow. So that's pretty good that we're getting rid of that. And then here's the the return line, and just look at how small that guy is. I mean, like, I'm pretty sure this is the idea of this guy is like the equivalent of a -6. So that's what essentially the upgrade we're going to have to the for the return line, because we're going -6 here, and then -8 is going to be quite a bit bigger than this, because that's probably honestly a -6 right there. But we're looking pretty good, so hopefully we can get these bungs welded on and get started on ripping out the lines on the car. So our factory feed line is out. As you can see, we had to do this compression fitting to an AN fitting when we had to fix the kinked line at the bottom of the fuel filter. So instead of trying to fix the hard line, well, I did try and fix the hard line, but that wasn't really a very easy task. So we went to 2 compression fittings and just snipped the line and then put a braided hose in there. And then again, the top is just the, I can't remember what size this is, but whatever this thread size is to a -8. Now the return line is still in here, but it's like, it's kind of a bitch to get to. It's all the way back there. There's like 3 bolts you got to take off to get access to this thing. So yeah, for now, we're just gonna leave it. Just a mess in here. I really want to clean it up one of these days, but yeah, so there's, I believe that's the line right there. Yeah, it's this guy right here. So it's a pain in the ass to get to, but there's a bunch of bolts in the back of the firewall here, and I do not want to mess around with that. So we're gonna leave that in and just kind of abandon it for now. Here's the fuel hanger with the welded bungs on it. So here we have the -6 AN fitting and then the -8 AN fitting for the feed. And again, that's for the return. This is the siphon line. And I really don't know how people get away with it when they're installing their bungs, but this line was like completely over top of this, like not even close to not being on top of it. And so we had to move it over a little bit. We tried to not kink it. It's got a very, very minor little, I don't think it's gonna affect anything at all. And then it cracked, so that had to be re-welded, but we're keeping the factory underside because I do really like the seal that I have, the O-ring. So here's that O-ring from Toyota that I got, and I really like how this seals, so we're gonna keep that on there. So I wanted to retain the factory underside here, and then we also keep the same return and siphon, so I don't need to do the Evo siphon mod. So yeah, everything's the same under here, which is great, and the fittings do fit nicely on here. And we'll now what we're gonna do is actually drill in to the fuel pump hanger so we could get this bulkhead fitting in there. And this is gonna be for our 10 gauge wire, so we can wire directly, 10 gauge directly to the pump without having to go through the connector at all. So we're gonna be wiring that in. I'll drill it out and I'll kind of show you what it looks like when it's done. Bang, here it is. It's pretty much done now. I just drilled out a hole, and I kind of had to shave away a little bit of this little ridge here, but yeah, that should work. And then I'll take that back out, but then we'll tape these off and give this a coat of paint, and then we'll put everything back in, get that connector back in, and we'll be ready. Well, it's the next day and we've got our hanger painted. Looks pretty nice. And then we've got our fuel rail all finished up as well. Not my best work, as you can see there, but we don't really care. So I want to give a big shout out to Quantum Fuel Systems, because I made a warranty claim on the old pump, and they honestly didn't ask any questions. I just submitted a form, and the very next day this guy got shipped out. So yeah, they sent me a brand new pump, and no questions asked, essentially. So good on them. Really appreciate their customer service. So go check them out. It's not a sponsored ad, but they helped me out a ton here. So that's really wicked for them to be sending me that pump like that. So check them out, guys. Well, here's the final product. We've got the brand new 525 pump installed. Our bulkhead fittings are installed, and we also hardwired the pump. So we are no longer going through the connector anymore for our power and ground. And we have the factory siphon with our, excuse me, our drilled out siphon. And yeah, I think we're ready to install this thing. But there it is. I just wanted to make a note for my connections here. I did use butt connectors, the heat shrinkable butt connectors, and then I also threw some double walled heat shrink over top of them as well. But hopefully, I'm kind of hoping this guy seals. And for the factory connector, I did throw some JB weld on there and the underside as well. Hopefully that seals up okay. Yeah, fingers crossed for that. But yeah, this washer, nylon washer, hopefully that guy seals up on this bulkhead fitting here. Here's the new hangers set up, installed on the car. We are gonna have to get a new hose for this guy so we can reach this, since I did have to bend it out of the way to get access to this guy, but that's not a big deal. Other than that, this is looking pretty good. We'll run these wires over here. Yeah, so far so good. Well, I think this is pretty much it. We still have to get the connector plugged in, but for a mock-up, this is where we're at. We've got the 10 gauge wire coming through. None of these are tight because, again, it's just a little bit of a mock-up here, but it's looking pretty good. Everything seems like it's gonna fit. We have a tight radius -8 on here and just a regular 90-6 on here, and they're about the same height. -6 might be just a smidge higher, but I did order a 90 tight radius for the -6 and I just can't seem to find it. But yeah, it looks pretty good, I think. I got that longer hose in here, and there's no kinks, which is good. But everything's looking pretty nice, guys. It's a bit of a mess right now, but we've got both of our lines kind of ran. I mean, they're under there. I got to tuck them up, but I chose to route it under here and then along the side and then up through there because it just wouldn't go where the factory lines would go. So I'll show you where it comes out. And we've got the feed coming in right here into our fuel filter, and then it'll come from the fuel filter obviously to the rail, and then our this is our return, which is probably going to end up somewhere around here. And I'm still trying to figure out where if I'm gonna change where that's mounted. But right now we're gonna put in our new fuel rail, just so we can get the -8 coming off of the rail to the regulator. I want to show you guys a little trick for these spacers because they don't sit in there very good. They just like kind of fall. So what you need to do is get a zip tie, and then when you put it in, it just stays there. So just a little tip for you guys. We've got the new AEM fuel rail installed. When you're getting the fitting on this side, make sure you get a forged 90 or a tight radius 90 because it like barely fits in there. So the regular 90 is not going to work. So there's just another little tip for you guys. I do have my cover kind of drilled out a little bit to make a little more room. That was for the last setup, but I don't think it's going to need it for this one. It does sit a little lower, and it actually fits better this way. I think the fuel rail is a little bit shorter too, so that kind of works out for me. Everything's all plumbed up here. I managed to get some fittings here. We have a -8 to -6 adapter here, and then just a -6 union. And I primed it, but my battery is actually like almost dead. It's like I got a pretty bad parasitic draw. So anyways, we have on the gauge, it was like pointed like over here, which is around like 60 PSI. So we either removed a big restriction in the fuel system, which obviously would have been that kink that we had on the hanger, or it's the hard wire we did. So I adjusted it back down, but for now we've got the battery on charge. So we just have the charger on our battery here. And once that's all finished up, then I guess we'll fire it up and see what kind of changes it made. Okay guys, here's underneath. This is starting from the fuel tank, and I put the feed line in the factory kind of hangers, but I did add one hold down, and the return is just running alongside it. So we've got clamps all the way along. I got a couple zip ties for good measure, and then it runs underneath there. And the reason I put this is just like a rubber hose that I just cut and put here just to prevent any rubbing on this edge here. So we just have that hose there, and then of course it just curls up into there. But yeah, that's what it looks like down here. And we got it fired up, and so far we've got no leaks or anything. Everything looks good. Our pressure is right where we want it, like 30, I don't know, 38 or so. So everything's looking pretty good. We'll let it warm up and we'll see if we can go take it for a drive. I also wanted to mention that I did put a tight radius on here as well. It still honestly doesn't close 100%, but you can get most of it in there, so I don't know, we'll see how it fits with the back seats. But yeah, I did put a tight radius in there. I found it, so I put it on. Yeah, just make sure you do use both the tight radiuses because you need it. Hell yeah, let's go, boys. Did a couple more pulls after that last one, and here's like a second and third, and we're not losing fuel pressure anymore. If you look down here, it stays dead at like 69, 68, so that's pretty sweet. Our wideband says 11, so we're pretty dialed actually. 11.1. 11.5 is probably right where it needs to be, but 11.2, 11.1, that's good enough for me. 25, almost 26 there, so PSI of boost. So yeah, it's looking pretty good. I don't really see any issues. We don't have any knock, and yeah, our fuel's looking really good, guys. So I think that fixed our fuel pressure issues, and we are now ready to go full E85, or at least do a flex fuel tune here. So I'll reach out to Kevin and we'll get this thing tuned up. I think that's gonna do it for this one. Obviously she needs a bath, but yeah, things are looking pretty promising here, and everything's coming together. Well, I just sent over a log for Kevin to set up the ethanol sensor and whatnot. So I go on vacation here, but once I get back, we'll throw some E85 at this thing and maybe try and get 30 pounds of boost out of her. Really pushing the limits of the stock block here, but let's go have some fun and see what it'll do.